Thank you very much indeed for making the time. It is indeed a sad time, but as you've been watching on our screens, a lot of celebration as well. People mourning and people are celebrating. What did Nelson Mandela mean to you and the people of KwaZulu-Natal?
Thank you, Blaine, for talking to you. Nelson Mandela, for us, is like Chief Luthuli. We thought that the work of Chief Luthuli would continue, as he had passed it over to Mandela. But because he's late now, we are a bit worried. Who can go into his boots? I remember seeing Mandela in 1996 when he came to Groundville. It was the funeral service of Mrs. Luthuli, Chief Luthuli's wife. He had jokes. One thing I remember, he followed Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who delivered a speech when he said, when we were at Adams with Albertina Luthuli, I nearly made advances to her the way she was beautiful. Then when Mandela presented a speech, he first made a joke. He said, oh, I do not know what to say because Chief Buthelezi knows the family better than me. And then he proceeded to this speech. That accommodative nature of Mandela made us all laugh and realize what type of a man he was. Yeah. He said he was in jail when Chief Luthuli was being buried. He could not come out, but because now he had the privilege of witnessing the funeral of Mrs. Luthuli, so he can now speak as if he's speaking before Chief Luthuli himself. Yeah. When he was delivering a speech, we learned that he tried to copy Chief Luthuli. Chief Luthuli was a staunch Christian, and he was a person who did not like violence. Because Mandela was young, he was militant. He thought things would be solved quickly. But Luthuli was old, and he said, no, must be patient, must do things correctly. Of course, he had the background of faith because he was a deacon in the church, Chief Luthuli, and he had also been the chief of Groundville until he was ousted, when he was forced to choose between chieftainship and being the president of the ANC. Yeah. And he said, to be the chief of Groundville, I only control this area. But to be the president of the ANC, I control the world. Then he opted to be the president of the ANC. That alone made Mandela to think that this man is different. It means that he is doing this work for God, not for the people, not for himself, because his family could not get help from Chief Luthuli because of the people of Groundville, because of the whole world. One striking thing about Chief Luthuli and Mandela was that it was not only the blacks who were being discriminated, who were being oppressed. The government itself, white government, was being oppressed because they had to think about the blacks, what they would do to them. If a black would pass his house, then you'd call the police, thinking that a black man is going to attack him. But Chief Luthuli said, no, blacks don't have that. And Mandela did the same. So when he became the president, we were all happy, Mandela, because we knew that he would implement what Chief Luthuli had taught him. Yeah. And then he managed to amalgamate all the races. We've got now a rainbow nation because of Mandela doing what Chief Luthuli had taught him. Yeah. And he was the president only for 5 years. When he left, then he had to see how are the following presidents are doing. I hope because he has now left the world, then you'd pray for South Africa, for the presidents to control this country well.
You talk about the different facets of his character, and indeed he had the serious side. He was a canny politician, wily at that, and he had to be. But then, as you mentioned, he was had a real soft side to it. He was also a boxer, I remember, and I think he would need all that fighting instinct to fight, not only physical fights, but the political fights that come up in his way. You mentioned him seeking counsel from Albert Luthuli. How much of a void do you think he leaves now? And do you think we can get another leader? It's not impossible. We can get another leader of that caliber. Do you think that's possible?
It is possible. But as long as people would realize that to be a leader, you are chosen by God. So people are made by God to choose you. So you've got to fear God, because that is the first step of wisdom. But if people think that you are chosen by people, it's going to be a problem, because if people make mistakes, you cannot correct them. You always have a fear that they will oust you.
Yeah.
But if it is God, then you will not fear people.
Thank you very much for your time. That's where we have to leave it, I'm afraid. Lots of time running out. That was Blessing Mthethwa giving us an insight about the relationship, the very vital relationship between Chief Albert Luthuli and Nelson Mandela.